Hi again, everyone. Patrick Pfingsten from theillinoize.com. Happy to be joined by Rick Pearson, our good friend from the Chicago Tribune, a star political reporter. Wanted to talk a little bit more about redistricting since we saw the congressional map get passed by the legislature last week as we record this. And a lot of dominoes started to fall on Friday. And here we are on Monday afternoon as we sit down, Rick, trying to get a sense of where we are and where we go from here. I think we've got to start with Marie Newman, right? Who did she tick off?
Well, you never want to be the lowest person on the totem pole. And this was kind of the case for both the freshman Democrat, Marie Newman, as well as the Republican with Mary Miller. And so they're the ones most likely to be vulnerable in any kind of redistricting when you're going to lose one of the congressional seats. I mean, Newman, came in and in an area that had been traditionally kind of almost Reagan Democrat, I guess you would say, in the southwest suburbs, more conservative Democrat. She beats Dan Lipinski, and the Lipinski family had held that seat for so long. She wins. She comes in as a progressive, but still, you've got the other two Democrats that are newcomers in the suburbs with Lauren Underwood and Sean Casten. They're both two-termers. They were more in need of kind of shoring up districts just for support. They'd earned it by winning 2 times, although Underwood very close last time against Jim Oberweis. And then you also had, and frankly, I think the biggest overall dynamic of this map and how it kind of trickles down to the rest was the need by Democrats to create a second Latino influence district. And the only way you're going to do that is by working into some of those city areas, as well as the suburbs that Democrats have made gains in recent times. So she was the one at the bottom of the totem pole among Democrats.
Mm-hmm. And she ended up getting drawn into a super majority Latino district with Chuy Garcia in that new 4th district, where we can be as polite as we want, but she wasn't going to win a primary in the 4th. So she's now taking a chance on the 6th, but the 6th actually has more of her district in the new map than Sean Casten does, right?
It does, but I would say that is also still part of that more conservative part of the district that she had, the more kind of Lipinski type part of the district. I mean, the other thing too, when you look at the Garcia district, and of course Garcia talked about wanting a second Latino district, but did he really want one? He'd rather have his shoring up. And so, you're right. She couldn't win in a 67% Latino district. But this district, even as she talks about that 40% is old territory, they may know her, but they may not necessarily be supportive of her. And, Casten is a very aggressive campaigner. He knocked out a veteran Republican to win that seat. And this is going to be a very interesting matchup. If you remember, right after the final version of the map came out, Newman's initial statement was blasting the map makers, blasting the process, blasting everybody. Then on Friday, when she announces about taking on Casten, kind of took a breath here, and then and adopted the attitude that she's going to have in trying to lure people who don't know her to vote for her.
It's interesting to see the way that Democratic map makers have worked ways to preserve 3 African American seats in Congress. With Bobby Rush, Danny Davis, and Robin Kelly. Even though she's not from the city, her district goes up to 43rd and Lakeshore, and then all the way down south of Danville, where it picks up, my home area, which is all cornfields. Davis sneaks out to the west, Rush sneaks out to the southwest. I think was past Joliet, almost to Minooka, if I remember right. What does that show you? Is it more about incumbent protection, or is it more about preserving as much of these African-American majority seats as you can.
And I'm not even really sure that you can call them African-American majority.
It may not even be majority at this point.
But it's, obviously the fears of Federal Voting Rights Act challenges were, very big in this map. And so, even though Latinos have now supplanted Blacks among racial and ethnic groups, you still have to do, quote, your best to try to preserve those districts. I think you probably could call them Black influence districts or opportunity districts now rather than majorities, just because the majorities weren't going to be there. But nevertheless, I think that's, and certainly incumbent preservation, let's face it, when you're dealing with Robin Kelly is now the Democratic Party chairman of Illinois. So, you're not going to do much to her. Then with Rush and Danny Davis, two longtime veterans. I mean, Davis's district is changed, but substantially it is his base district. Bobby Rush's district, and he's not happy, but Rush's district just picks up extra territory along the south. It still holds his base voting block. So as I said, with the Latino creation of the second Latino district, that was to fend off a potential voting rights challenge, I think, and trying to insulate themselves. Not that there won't be any challenges. We all know in redistricting, this is
always a challenge. Yeah.
Prime opportunities for lawyers and statistical analysis from colleges you've never heard of to testify. So, but yeah, I think it's Voting Rights Act is speaking very loudly there.
I think that begs the question, and we can get to the Kinzinger and the Mary Miller and Rodney Davis situations here in a minute. But I think since we talk about that second, and the 14th sprawls to the west, and the 11th sprawls to the west, and the 5th sprawls to the west, the 13th is a long string bean of a district. The 17th has these weird gloves and fingers to pick up urban areas. But just to use the second as an example, when you've got voters on the south side, whether it's 43rd and Lakeshore or Hegewisch or the south suburbs, mixed in with Danville and Rantoul and Watseka, what message does that send to voters that no matter what, it's pretty much set in stone who your congressman's going to be?
Well, I mean, it is the process, and as the U.S. Supreme Court has decided that gerrymandering for political advantage is legal and not subject to challenge. And yeah, I mean, I love the fingers that reach from the 17th, I think it is, that reach over to Freeport and city of Rockford, and then the 15th, how it kind of skirts around urban areas, those kinds of things. I mean, is it fair that somebody who's basically downstate is represented by a Chicago congressman? I don't know that that's fair. I mean, can you expect to get that equal representation that you're deserved? That's up to the congressman. And if you don't deliver constituent services, and frankly, that's the bread and butter of these people in Congress. It's, I really wonder how many people are, following the daily travails of Biden and his, Build Back Better program as much as, I need a passport, I need this, I need that, my Social Security's messed up. You still have to deliver the basics no matter where you live. And I think that's still a fundamental platform. But, we've been seeing that kind of stretching of districts for a while now. I mean, when you look at the 5th district, the current 5th district, which stretches from the lakefront through Wrigley Field over to O'Hare, and then cuts down through DuPage County, Elmhurst. And, my first thought when I saw that 10 years ago is, how does a city Democrat represent old Eastern, still kind of bedrock DuPage County? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, yeah, there's still kind of bedrock DuPage County, but as we see with the new Latino district, the new 3rd, you're picking up parts of what was old DuPage County and Addison, and then stretching all the way out to West Chicago and Wheaton and places like that. I mean, the population shifts and moves, but yeah, when you start really, and I think it's more prevalent in like the Rush district and the second district, where drawing those city districts to Danville or Minooka or whatever, you better, if you're the congressman, you better have some district offices set up and be prepared to work with those people. They don't know you. You've got some work ahead of you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Robin Kelly as the example. If she's putting offices in, in Kankakee or in Watseka where Kinzinger has one now, or Danville where Mary Miller has one now. It'll be interesting to see if she puts that sort of a focus in those areas, or Rush or whoever else.
And the second district, it had gone down to Kankakee before. Yeah. And so, Kankakee, I don't think you could really call an exurb of
it's weird, in that situation.
It's not like Oswego is or something like that, where Kankakee does have, still a lot of rural around it. And, it was, being represented by Jesse Jackson Jr. For a while. So, obviously Kelly has some of that territory already. It's just a matter of growing it further south.
So they did split Kankakee and Bradley from Bourbonnais, which I thought was interesting. When you talk about splitting communities of interest and municipalities, et cetera. And Adam Kinzinger had that district in his first term in Congress in 2010. He's now out or will be out. He announced Friday, and he was once the darling of the right as a young, good-looking, conservative Air Force veteran, and I've written in our newsletter and our website, my support for Kinzinger plenty, as someone who's willing to tell the truth. But I think the reality is, was there a primary anywhere he could actually win? I mean, there isn't a place for Adam Kinzinger in today's Republican Party.
Well, yeah, and there was some national pundit who said, well, it wasn't Trump that forced him out, it was the Democrats, because if he had the same district, he would have won. And it's like, well, there's not going to be the same district, just by the basic of reality. He's not going to get the same district. I mean, I do think, if the first iteration of the map, which put him and Marie Newman into a district that kind of traveled along I-80.
That would have been fun.
I think that would have been an interesting race, and might have affected his decision making. But there's no way in the incarnations and in what Republicanism is today in this state that I don't know of any district that he could go to and hope to achieve victory, let alone a primary victory.
And there were thoughts of maybe even U.S. Senate, which would have been a tough haul. I mean, I had somebody compare it to Mark Kirk in 2010, where he had voted for cap and trade and had some Republicans angry with him, but the way that Trumpism has taken over the GOP was a magnitude 10 times more than anything Mark Kirk would have voted for.
Absolutely, because and we keep seeing these nationalization of our elections, and with Kirk and Giannoulis, that was much more of a local race than it really was kind of a national race. And I took what Kinzinger said in his video announcement that he wouldn't seek re-election. I really don't see a statewide race. I don't see a Senate race. I don't see a race for governor. And he, used the words about he couldn't run necessarily for Congress and have a broad national forum. He felt basically Congress was too limited to his efforts to try to achieve this change in republicanism. So I see it more as an opportunity to use the airwaves, cable news networks, and the building of that PAC as something to keep him active until he sees if there's a place for him or not.
So you have 3 Republicans left, or 3 Republican districts left, and 4 sitting members left in Darren LaHood, Rodney Davis, and Mary Miller and Mike Bost. Bost is going to run in 12, and LaHood's going to run in the new 16, and it sounds like Miller's going to run in 12, depending on what Davis does, and it sounds like Davis hasn't made up his mind. What do you see shaping up downstate?
Well, I mean, I can absolutely see Miller wanting to take on Bost, because I do think that the Davis's district as it is may not be as receptive for her embrace of the far right of Trumpism as much as Southern Illinois is, south of I-70. I think that's much more a territory that is supportive of her ultra right-wing views than you would see like in Western Illinois in a race against Davis. So I if I were looking with a crystal ball, and I don't have any knowledge here, but I would expect that, she would see a Bost matchup as something more politically favorable to her. But no one should rule out, Mike Bost. I mean, he's been in this game for a long time. It's, prime his area to begin with, and he's a known figure down there. I mean, he works hard down there, and that would be a very intense battle. But I just think that even though her district was like literally, you could probably hit a 3-wood from her house and get into Rodney Davis's district. I just don't see the Republicans there as that hardcore that is the type that, she goes and has MTG campaign for in Effingham.
Yeah, that is what it is, right? So before we let you go, Rick, on the legislative situation that's ongoing, there are 3 lawsuits regarding the September legislative map that was passed that the MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, says that Latinos were disenfranchised. East St. Louis NAACP says East St. Louis voters were cracked out of Latoya Greenwood's district into Jay Hoffman's district. And then obviously there's the Republican suit, which previously focused more on population, which is less the point of the current discussion. What are you hearing from Democrats? Because as much faith as they have in Mike Casper and Heather Vaught, I've definitely heard from some that are concerned that this thing is going to get tossed.
I don't necessarily see that the entire map is going to get tossed here, but I do see maybe some changes, and this is somewhat commonplace in the judicial process, where various revisions are submitted to the court. So as much as Republicans were talking about, oh, we won, the courts have taken hold of the process. Well, they kind of always take hold of this process. But I do think they're, particularly from the MALDEF challenge, they are under a great deal of pressure to try to, come up with more Latino influence districts. And when MALDEF gets involved, it's the real deal. And most people may not hear about MALDEF until redistricting time, but they know their stuff, and they are very successful across the country. And when they got involved in this, I mean, that spoke volumes about work that needed to be done. And the fact that the final revision map post-census perhaps didn't address MALDEF's concerns, which the court had advised Democrats to do, was take a look at what these concerns are in the legal cases. The fact that they didn't, to any great degree, I think the map is vulnerable to changes. But I don't think it's likely to see the entire thing tossed.
Governor Pritzker, pretty blatantly flip-flopped on a campaign promise to veto politician-drawn maps. He seemed to do it without a ton of at least public hesitation. Does do he or his team fear any repercussion from voters in that, or do they think that it's an issue that just doesn't matter?
No, they don't fear any repercussions. And it's when you go through this every 10 years, it's also a process of trying to explain to people why this is very important. This is the most political thing that a state legislature does, and it sets the course for political policy for a decade. And you try over and over again to try to explain to people why redistricting matters. And 85%, 90%, people don't care. I mean, the average voter doesn't care. It's just more politics to them. It's everything is always gerrymandered. And truly, if we were a Republican state, we'd be hearing the arguments from Democrats that Republicans weren't transparent.
Look at Indiana.
It's totally, irrelevant. When you're on the losing side, you try to look good. It's just, to me, arguing about redistricting and fairness and the map and all that, absolutely legitimate. Is a political issue, nobody cares.
Rick Pearson from the Chicago Tribune. Rick, as always, appreciate your time and knowledge and thoughts, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.